With that, we'll move on to the next one. Item B, and that is sustained cases. And I think let's go with 25821. Looking at that. Ms. McDermott, would you like to review that one for us?
Sure, Chair French. I wasn't sure how you wanted to discuss or go over that, but the recommended discipline for that particular officer was going to be was going to be a written reprimand. However, in this particular case, as you may have read, there was some acknowledgement that a non-disciplinary corrective action might be more appropriate. The situation involved an officer arresting someone for a domestic violence situation and then took that person to the hospital because they weren't cleared to be taken to jail, and therefore took them to the hospital and then decided that they were going to release that person rather than follow the policy which says they will remain at the hospital with that person. So that was the violation, and the concern was that the officer had expressed some, for lack of a better, like just frustration or breakdown. And so it was certainly part of this disciplinary action packet recommendation to APD that it be made sure that the officer was aware of resources and that the supervisor of the officer was aware that, this might be of a concern to look more into. So that is the recommended discipline for this particular case. Chair French, you're on mute, and I believe Ms.
Thank you so much. Member Galloway.
You're on mute now, Chantal.
2 years we've been doing this case and the next one are part of the reason why I'm really having some heartburn over this change in the way that we're handling cases, because there's a variety of things that I have come up with this case in particular. The officer was on the phone with somebody and at PTC asking about, is it okay to just release this person? It was in the investigative report that it was a felony battery. I don't know who was at PTC deciding these things, and should that person also receive some sort of corrective measures. Releasing this individual to go back and then...
Do you want me to address that one at a time? Just so that we don't...
Sure.
Pilot?
Sure. So that one.
So, yeah, the investigation did attempt to figure out who that particular individual was, and the officer had just said that it was a person that was not qualified, essentially, to make that. First, they didn't say who it was, so we don't know who it was. There are many people that work at the PTC, so trying to narrow down, we were not able to figure out who that was. But in terms of that person, the officer had said, and I can't go into like direct quotes, but basically, I knew it was wrong. I was just trying to kind of cover things, and I was, frustrated. So, yes, if we were able to clearly identify the other individual and clearly say that they gave incorrect information, then yes, you would be correct. However, the investigation was not able to determine who that individual was, nor was the information that we received able to say that this person was giving wrong information and quote unquote at fault. So just to address that for you.
I appreciate that, which leads to even more of a concern with this particular officer and why I'm uncomfortable with just a written reprimand. If they knew that that was not the appropriate way to handle things and they were just trying to find a scapegoat, that's another concern. That the officer would have a potential felony battery situation going on and release that person to then go back and again batter their spouse is concerning. that the second officers that showed up acknowledged that there was a problem and then didn't take that person into custody again. Like, it's just, it was this snowball thing as I was reading through this that's just going, what happened here?
And in terms of your question about the other officers were not able to locate that individual. So that's why they were not able to take that person into custody. They had fled prior to when they came on the scene, the second officers. They had left to a location. So
I thought they found her in the car per the investigative report. That she was sitting in the car outside of her mom's apartment. Did I misread that?
I would have to double check that, but I don't think so. I would have to double check that, but I don't think so.
80% sure of that, but it's possible that I've made a mistake. I doubt it. I also didn't see anything in any of the OBRD that indicated that this officer was experiencing any sort of breakdown. So I thought that was interesting too. I mean, I think a written reprimand is just wholly inappropriate in this situation, and I think that there's just more that needs to be looked at with this. And so I don't know what to do because we don't have the findings discussion anymore that we can have. But this is problematic. First one out of the gate is problematic and very uncomfortable. So those were my concerns with this case. And now I'm less sold than I was, 2 months ago when we were talking about these ordinance changes that were being proposed. And I think this case highlights a reason for more of a second set of eyes sometimes on.
Were there any other comments on this particular case? Okay. Member Crawford.
Yeah, I think Member Galloway kind of covered a lot of it. This case is pretty, I feel like it's not that often that we see a sustained case that is sort of this significant of an issue that occurred. I agree that a written reprimand seems pretty light in consideration of what happened. I'm hoping to spend maybe a little more time than I have looking at the policy because I didn't have a lot of time to review cases this month. I did want to bring up, though, I think it's also hard to read this case and not be pretty alarmed by what it says about the level of staffing and support that's available to APD officers in the field. That it seems like an officer kind of got into a situation where they didn't feel like they had reasonable options, This is an interesting case just as far as it seems like the officer was, kind of directly confessed to the whole thing, but just said that they felt like they were backed into a corner, I guess, and didn't really have other options. And it's really concerning that situation exists. And I don't know, maybe we can flail at policy. I don't know what can be done to help, but it's certainly concerning.
And if I may, Chair French, just I understand in terms of the board's concerns about discipline level, and just so that you're aware, it does have to follow the 3-46. So, which is what the disciplinary action packet tried to kind of lay out the information for the board. That's what's presented to the department too. Of course, it is with the board's recommendation, so you can recommend other things, but 3-46 is the guiding principle for those issues.
Okay, any other comment? Well, let me just get a better understanding of this because I think there's different interpretations of the ordinance. So on these particular sustained cases, are we just reviewing them and not saying if we accept the agency's? I guess I will ask Ms. Gooch on that, on the interpretation of the ordinance.
Chair French, I will also ask Director McDermott to chime in if she also has a different understanding, but I read the ordinance as saying the director with board approval is how recommended discipline from the chart of sanctions occurs. So for these sustained findings where discipline is recommended, I read the ordinance as requiring the board to take a vote to approve the chart of recommended sanctions and what the director is proposing.
Thank you.
Answers the question.
Okay, thank you. So let me ask the board this. Do we want to take each case separately and vote separately on them?
Nope.
Yeah, I'd recommend against doing so. I mean, we haven't done so in the past, and I guess I'm not sure that I feel that the changes to the process that have happened really bring up a reason to change that.
Member Galloway.
We have absolutely split cases under a findings in the past, and I think that that's completely fine to do that if the board wants to do that. But I also don't particularly have a reason to, because I'm not comfortable with the next case. I don't think either.
Okay, then let's move on to the next one.
Chair French, if I could.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, because I'm not totally sure that I came off as saying what I meant to. I mean, I think it's fine for us to consider cases separately when we want to. What I really meant when I said no is I don't want to proceed agenda-wise through each case individually and have the director present on each case individually. That's not what we've done in the past, and I think it's reasonable to stick to our usual pattern of going by disposition and not having the director present unless a board member, wants to discuss a case separately.
Okay. Then let's move on to the next one because I do.
Member Nixon has a question, and then I have a procedural question after.
I think that's an excellent idea that Member Crawford just came. Member Galloway may have a problem with a couple of cases or whatever it is, and we want to make sure that she has the opportunity to weigh in on those if she needs to, ask questions, etc. But going through every case and talking about it, not so much. If we all concur on cases that, okay, we don't have anything else to say about it, let's move on for the sake of time.
Okay, sounds good to me.
And so if I may, since we do have with the change, the discipline has to be with board approval. So as I understand it, I would need a motion and a vote from the board to agree with this discipline recommendation or propose a different discipline recommendation for each. So for each of the sustained, that is something that I would need so that I can advise the department that the board has approved these particular recommended findings if Council Gooch agrees with that assessment.
And that discipline recommendation is going to be part of the package for each of these cases, right? It's going to be in there.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing for these particular cases, because again, as I read the ordinance, it said that the board had to have sufficient information to be able to essentially back that decision. And so in these cases, it seemed, of course, appropriate that you would have the more information because you're not voting on the findings, but you are voting on the discipline. And so to be able to back that decision, more information would be necessary. Is how I interpreted it.
Ms. Gooch, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair French, Director McDermott. I agree with the director's interpretation of the ordinance that the agency needs board approval on each of these cases. It doesn't say how you have to do it. You could take them on their dispositions as members Crawford and Nixon have proposed, but you do have to take a vote so that the director can proceed.
So I guess we'll take a vote on whether we agree with the discipline proposed for 258-21 and 003-22. And so I believe Ms. Varela, would you take the roll whether we agreed? So the vote's going to be, I'm sorry, Ms. Gooch, please tell me.
Thank you, Chair French. I'll help a bit. You need a motion in a second, and then you can take your roll call and do your discussion. And you have discussion, absolutely. So you probably don't need, you can probably just do your motion, a second, and then do your vote.
You're absolutely right. I'm sorry. Maybe we need to take a short break. Anyway, I get a cup of coffee or something. Member Galloway?
Member French, I would like to move that we do not accept the disciplinary recommendations in 258-21.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. don't believe we need any more discussion. Ms. Barilla, would you take the roll?
I'm sorry, it looks like Jesse Cross.
Yeah, I'd like to
has his hand up.
discuss if I could.
Sure, go right ahead.
My concern is just about what happens if we don't accept the proposed discipline. I think, timeline-wise, we need to get some sort of recommendation for discipline to APD, or I think the clock kind of runs out because of the CPA restrictions. My understanding of this might not be perfect, and Director McDermott, please correct me if I'm off, but I think we are on the clock a bit to get something to APD. And so I think if we don't approve the proposed discipline, then I think we probably need to propose something else. And from kind of a policy and ordinance perspective, that needs to be something off of the chart of sanctions, which, I'm not a chart of sanctions expert, but that only gives us so much flexibility. Oh, wrong button. I meant to mute myself, sir.
And Chair French, if I may, and members. So yes, I mean, if you are going to reject this discipline recommendation, then it would need to be a different recommendation, basically, from the board to propose, or the alternative is the APD department will pick whatever they want to do, basically. And it wouldn't be considered a non-concurrence, essentially, because the board will have not selected something. So that's the different ways this could go.
Pulling that up.
So, Member Galloway, would you like to change your motion, or do you want to vote on this?
I do not want to. Yeah, I don't want to change
with the recommendation.
Okay. But I don't think that okay. So I guess my motion is going to be that we not accept the recommendation of a written warning or NDCA or NCDA or whatever that thing is. I think it needs to be at minimum a written warning, and it's microscopic in print on the policies and whatever the max is. I think the max was an 8-hour suspension, if I remember correctly. Pull that up.
For this particular one, and I've got the wrong one up. Hold on, sorry, I have the other one up. The disciplinary action packet will tell you what the minimum is for that range and the maximum. And I apologize, let me pull that one back up.
Max was written warning, it looks like. So I guess that be it.
So, Member Galloway,
you're right. NDCA or 8-hour is the range,
or an 8-hour.
Correct.
So okay, then 8-hour suspension, given what occurred.
Okay, so Member Galloway, what I was trying to say, do you want to change your motion, or to amend your motion, or do you want us to vote on your original motion and go back and vote again on a motion concerning the discipline?
No, I think you
want to add the discipline to your motion.
That one. I think that the motion is to reject the disciplinary recommendations of the agency in lieu of the 8-hour maximum suspension.
And Member Crawford, do you second that? I think you were the one that had seconded the original one.
Yeah, I'd second that motion.
I thought it was Nixon.
Oh, I'm sorry. Member Nixon. Are you fine with that?
Yes, I second it. Yep.
Okay. All right. So with that, we have a motion and a second, and I don't see any other discussion. I don't know why I say member. Ms. Varela.
Member Crawford?
Yes.
Member French?
Yes.
Member Galloway?
Yes.
Member Nixon?
Yes.
Member Wartell?
Yes.
Thank you. And that motion passed unanimously.
Thank you.